You need to be a visionary. You need to think about big things and vision and long
Yeah.
term, and otherwise you don't have really your direction and the big picture.
Eli Barak, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. It's so fantastic to have you. We know each other for quite some time now, for quite a few years, all the way back from the robotics team when you so generously came in and helped mentor our team, a relatively rookie team, and you've built some really incredible projects and mentorship in not Kfar Yarok, in Emek Hefer and Moetzet Hefer. So tell me a little bit about your journey. Where do you come from, and how do you do that transition from an entrepreneur and investor to education and mentorship?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me. Um, I think that probably the best definition is to say that I'm a serial entrepreneur who started in the software market in the Israeli army. Um, Found myself focusing on software. My first startup, the one that I did the first exit, was in the CRM ERP markets. Moved to the States, lived in the US for 5 years with my family, came back to Israel just before 9/11,
Wow.
and decided that I need to find something interesting to do once retired, because the exit was good enough. And after like 18 months of doing nothing and going to coffee shops, you need to figure out that you do want to do something. And I found myself, by coincidence, I must say, working with the high school kids, and robotics is an interesting platform, not necessarily because the kids will eventually focus on robotics in their adult's life, but rather because it's a combination of different disciplines, including mechanical engineering, software, system engineering, working in a team, understanding and handling priorities. So more than robotics, in a way, it's a great platform, if you want, to work with kids and um, start some kind of an excitement in them, to be part of the technology market or technology world. And this is basically what it is. It's a trigger.
But Ellie, before we get deeper into the robotics, I have to understand because most people who end up devoting you're pretty much over 100% time towards education and mentorship, they
Right.
often come from those types of backgrounds that they've done that for quite some time. You're coming in as an entrepreneur, investor, serial entrepreneur, and you're saying all of a sudden devoting 100% of your time or 150% of your time to helping mentor kids. So how does that work?
Well, first of all, 100% or 120% is a relative definition. If you want, you have 26 hours a day, and you find time to do things that you like. I kept doing, and I'm still doing a lot of work with entrepreneurs, adult entrepreneurs. What you find out, and what attracted me to work also with high school kids, is that if you think about it, this is the next generation. You talk about the millennials now, even if they are now 15, 16 years old, in 10 years, they are the next generation
Right.
entrepreneurs. So even if you are focused on entrepreneurs and startups and you're looking for the next generation, you find yourself talking to kids. Um, they are very intuitive, very innovative. So I think that what you find out when you work with kids around those areas of innovation, and out of the box thinking, is that you can get great results when you have mixed teams of adults and kids. And this is where I started with. I can say that now, about 20 years later, I came back to Israel 20 years ago, back from the States, 20 years later, and now I'm working with a lot of startups that are combining, and we'll talk about it later, combining kids and adults. It's a great combination because you have great ideas coming from them. Yeah, they are less mature, of course. They don't have all the professional skills you are looking for. In the same time, they are very, very innovative and are still capable of thinking out of the box.
Right.
Something that we are losing as we are aging and getting a profession.
Right.
And this is very interesting for the ecosystem in Israel. And we find, I can point out now 5 companies in the hub that we are running here in Emek Hefer, where we have kids, 11 and 12 graders that are part of those startups just because they met each other and
Right.
are now involved.
No, no, 100%. And I'd love to get to understand a little bit better about what this community that you're building there. So, what you're doing with Emek Hefer is not what an ordinary robotics team does in Israel or all over the world, and it's gone beyond simply the 6-week first robotics competition, right? It's gone much beyond that. So,
Yeah, so
talk to me a little bit about why, like, what is the community within this education sphere like first is, and what you're doing there, and then talk to me about what you're doing outside of just the first program.
sure. So again, it's not a secret that the traditional formal education system, the school system, is not working or not working very good. Now the COVID-19 days make it even more difficult, for that
Right.
system. Um, but kids are looking for something interesting to do. Everybody is bored. The typical answer you get from a typical high school kid that is coming back from school, and how was your day? And the answer is boring, or
Yep.
okay is the best you can get, like
Right.
a very shallow okay, like um, and the idea was to try to build some kind of an ecosystem that will, first of all, and before everything else, will reignite, if you want, people and make them excited about their daily operations. So the whole idea was to create some kind of an ecosystem, some kind of an environment where people could be excited about what they are doing. Put aside their age, whether those are kids or adults. And since I'm involved, for like 30 something years in technology and in the startup ecosystem, um, we said, and we is me together with another partner, his name is Liran, and we are partners here in Israel. Both of us are coming separately, but coming from the high-tech sector. And the idea was to create some kind of a local, if you want, domestic ecosystem that will be part of the community at large, if you want. So it's
Right.
not only your neighborhood, but it's the area around you. I would say 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people in
Wow.
that area. Emek Hefer is an example, the
Right.
Hefer Valley here in Israel. And try to bring content or create an enabling platform around entrepreneurship, innovation, out of the box thinking, not necessarily technology, but technology is a great start for many of those.
Right.
Put everything in place, which means content, lectures, you name it, put it there, and allow them to consume, if you want, the content and the place and everything you put in, for them when they need it, and develop themselves.
Right.
So we are mentoring and we provide a space, but it's if you want a hybrid solution, because it's a combination of an open space, like we work together
Yeah.
with an accelerator and a venture fund, and we do all of those together, but not in a predefined program that says, oh, well, welcome to our accelerator. You have 2 years, get $100
Right.
million. At the end,
Right.
you need to be able to fly or you crash.
Right.
Sometimes it works. Most of the times, it doesn't work.
Right.
And
Right.
and the idea here was to try and create the platform. So platform is a place to be, offices, maker space, CNC, and you name it, everything that you need to really make things and not only think about them,
Right.
if you want to do it. Bring a lot of content from leading leading ideas and CEOs of companies that are coming and talking to the future entrepreneurs in different areas.
Right.
Do mentoring and really bring mentors that could take them forward, and have a venture fund to do small early stage pre-seed if you want investments. All of that is aiming now not only adults, the usual entrepreneurs, but also kids,
Right.
and try to mix them. I don't know how you call it in the US, but in Israel, we have this pot that you do like a poike.
Yeah.
So, which is, so I don't know what's the terminology, probably the same way.
A melting
This
pot.
is the
Yeah.
notion. So this is the best description of what we're trying to do. You put in a lot of good materials, good people, mentoring, location. You do it very slowly. You need to be, not to try to expedite things. You
Right.
rather need to do it slowly, and you start to see the community really building in front of you. And I can say that now in Emek Hefer here, 3 years later, we have really a full place. We have a waiting list of like 10, 15 people that are trying to join, and we don't have any offices for them. We have more than 100 kids, high school kids that are involved in any given
Really.
time today. Yeah, more than 100.
Wow.
Probably next year we are going to have more. COVID-19 created a situation that, as I said, school is boring. Schools
Wow.
are now cooperating with us and saying, well, maybe the informal education is not so bad and it's interesting,
Right.
and they cooperate with us.
Wow.
Um,
What do you,
and that's
I'm
the
really curious
idea.
about what do you see in that space? So when you take high schoolers, and I'm a huge advocate of this myself, but you take high schoolers and you give them a different purpose that's intrinsic, informal education, that they actually get to build something and provide a product given executing on what they were learning. What do you see outside of the lab? Do they change at all? Are they more confident in different areas?
So great question. I would say that the main, think about it as a toolbox, and you basically equip them with a new toolbox for life. I would say that 90% of the value that we provide to those high school kids is not technical at all. It has nothing to do with robotics or space or other areas that we are supporting. It's rather on a personal toolkit of
Right.
how to be part of a team, how to integrate things. It doesn't matter what kind of integration, what we call system engineering, processes, understanding of how do you really manage personal priorities. And one of the interesting feedbacks we are getting from kids and from their teachers in school is that once they finish the first year here, in our program, they're coming back to school, and everything in school is very, very easy for them.
Really?
They easily handle the timeline, and they do the tests, and usually the grades are going up, although they spend about half of their time here.
Right.
They are spending afternoons and nights and the weekend, and you need to really push them back out, because if it's up to them, they spend every minute here. It's a community for them. So all the
Yeah.
friendships and everything, it's like a youth movement, if you want, which, by the way, is something we are doing right now in Israel with the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Science, turning all that type of operation into a recognized
Wow.
youth movement.
Huh.
It's called going to call Nesher, which in Hebrew stands for Noar Shocher Robotica, which is youth uh,
Something robotics.
interested or something robotics. And the whole idea is to really recognize the fact that it is a youth movement with everything involved. So, uh, personal skill sets, what they call the 21st century skill sets, is most of the best value they are getting.
Right.
Interesting to say that we see a lot of activities around us from different the Ministry of Education, the IDF, the Israeli army that are looking for those kids, not because they know how to do robotics, but they are much more mature
Yes.
in the understanding of how to work in a team.
Right.
Um, we do find a lot of situations where kids that were not the best ones in high school are finding things to really uh, excel and do things here and be leaders in different areas. We work a lot with the girls and fighting very successfully the situation where girls are not getting into technology for different reasons. This is not an Israeli problem, it's a worldwide one. Very successfully working with girls and really have a mixed groups working with different parts of the Israeli society, Haredim, that are not really into technology, and we're doing very well with them as well through different connections we have. So the whole idea is using technology. We are doing it especially with two, if you want, programs or titles. One of them you mentioned, which is robotics and the first organization. The other one is something that is developing all over the world now, which is what is called the new space or commercial space. Applications that are trying to or starting to look at space not only as an intelligence government type of area, but rather commercial or private sector that are looking into those areas. A lot of startups in Israel in this area. We are using it to attract kids to come to us. So we have now a Mars a simulator that we are building here
Wow.
in Emek Hefer together with the kids that are going, that is going to have like an underground lava type of whatever, and you're going to have a mission to Mars and a control room. The whole idea is really trigger them, bring them in. Once they are in, we get them.
100%.
Um,
But Ellie, I have to ask. So at the end of the day, you're running these programs, but how do you do this at scale, right? So as an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, investor, it's all about it. You create the value, you find the product market fit,
right.
you create an amazing experience. And now how do you replicate this all over the world? Because I'm convinced. I went through some of these programs with you, with your mentorship. I know how incredible it is and the tools that it gave me. But how do you get this? How do you get every kid in the world to have this experience?
So it's a great question, and it's a question that we started, asking ourselves about 3 years ago when we started the first location here in Emek Hefer, and we are 6 partners. All of us, by the way, are coming from the high tech sector, so this is not real estate for us.
Right.
The real estate part is just an enabling platform, and this was exactly the question that we were asking: Is this operation is some kind of a one man or two man or 5 man operation,
Yeah.
and that's it, or can you really replicate? Can you really scale? Took us 2.5 years to really examine the model, refine it, if you want. About a year ago, we started to work on our second location up in Emek Israel near Nahalal. We are now working on it, building the new location over there. That will be location number two.
Wow.
Hopefully, opened around Pesach, spring of 2021.
Wow.
We are already talking about the third location that is going to be somewhere around Rehovot, so a little bit south of Tel
Incredible.
Aviv. The whole idea is to do it outside of the big cities, do it in areas where people are looking. You have good a community, high skills on one hand, but people that are bored are looking for interesting things to see to do. It You could provide since you are out of the big city, real estate is cheaper, so you could do things that you cannot do, in Tel Aviv or in major locations. Like Emek Israel now is going to be all around space, and we are building now a new a planetarium over there, really sophisticated, a special telescope that is a sun telescope. So not only a regular one, a lot of development around this. In Emek Hefer, we do a lot of robotics and agriculture, which is something we could do here because we have tons of areas around us, and beta
Wow.
sites are the easiest thing to do. Um, and yeah, I think that I would say even on something which is important, you learn very early that if you want to have this model working, it cannot be based on philanthropy.
Right.
It
Right.
must be a business model.
Now, why is that? Why do you
Um,
think that is?
because long term, it's very easy to get donations, funds to build something, but it's basically impossible to keep getting those donations to operate it.
Right.
So you must, in a way, come with a plan that will be not only sustainable and could fund itself, but be profitable. Otherwise, you don't have the funds you need to really,
Right.
do the investments at the beginning.
And
And
continue
this is
to
exactly
innovate.
the model that
Right.
we're doing, and took us about 2 years to make sure that we understand how to make it profitable. Now, don't get me wrong, profitable while still understanding that there are impact aspects for your investment. Community is important. So it's not only maximizing the return of investment in terms of funding and money,
Right.
it's also in community value.
Incredible.
But the model needs to be sustainable, it needs to be profitable. And once you do, you could do whatever you want. And very interesting to say another thing, the government, the different agencies that are, and I'm not blaming them, are never first adopters. They are
Hmm.
not. They tend to join in later if you could prove that what you're doing is really working and sustainable and bringing value.
Right.
Once you do, they are eager to join because this is a success and they could be part of it. And I'm not cynical. What I want to say is that this is the way it works.
Yeah.
So if once you do it, I met yesterday the minister of science, Izar Shai,
Yeah.
and he came to Emek Israel to see what we are building over there. And now the Ministry of Science is supportive, and we are getting money for different things we want to do. But this is only after we proved that we are able to bring money, do what we need, or
That
in a
makes
way which is funny, but you know how they say about banks, the bank wants to lend you money only when you don't need it.
right.
So in a way, similar here. You need to be on your own, be able to support your ideas and prove that it's working. Everybody else will join you later on, which is fine.
Eli, this is insightful and inspiring. I just love what you're doing there, and I have no doubt that it'll continue to scale. And I know the impact that you personally had on me and Emek Hefer and the whole Motzah had on myself and my friends. And I'm watching everybody also, in the unit where I served. I pretty much recognize everybody from these amazing community, and it really is a youth movement. Just it's around technology, less about camping. It's a different youth
Yeah,
movement. Eli,
sure.
before we go, I need 3 words that you would use to describe yourself.
Yeah, this is also always interesting to look back and think about it. I would say probably I'm very focused in everything I do, and people that are working with me know it. Some kind of a combination. I usually say that I'm a tall person. I'm not very tall, not at all, but tall in the sense of your head need to be, up there in the sky. You need to be a visionary. You need to think about big things and vision and long
Yeah,
term, otherwise you don't have, really your direction and the big picture.
definitely.
In the same time, you need to be very connected to the ground.
Right.
Your feet need to be well, connected to the ground and need to be into the details. There is a phrase that somebody used that says, think big and act small. I really
Right.
believe in this. I think that we need to, and I'm trying to be um, strategic or think strategy in everything I'm doing, which I think is a good combination to describe me. Some kind of emphasis on strategy together with very practical approach to life. And I believe that the combination is what makes it not only interesting, but I will allow myself to say successful.
Eli, תודה רבה רבה. This is wonderful, and I can't wait to come visit the greater space. And it's just incredible the work that you're doing. So thank you very, very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Take care.